We are in constant mitzvot, and we're on day 30. And it says studying Torah. That's right. Yay. Chinuch writes, to love Hashem is to study His commandments and His deeds until we gain an understanding of them according to our ability, and to take extreme pleasure in that understanding. This is a love that is required of us. As the Sifri states, if it would state only, V'havta et Hashem Elokecha, you shall love Hashem your God, I would not know how one comes to love Hashem. Therefore the Torah continues, V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela she'anochi misavcha hayom ala vavecha, and these matters that I command you today shall be upon your heart. That is, if you delve into Torah study, love of Hashem will most definitely fill your heart, which is why I was just saying that if you spread it out, instead of going for a half hour here, and so on and so forth, it will be much more of a build-up. That's really what you're trying to do. And that's why, for those who are listening, you missed the beginning. Okay, but that's why I say that if people would split their day up, like the rabbis say actually, that's why they had Chok L'Yisrael, and it was, or even for women, they had Enorena, which was on the Parsha. But all of those things gave a really nice background. Moyim Lo'ez is the same sort of thing. But all of these books that they have, they break it up into pieces, easy pieces, that you can do it in a relatively short time. And that's what you want to do, because if you do that, again, over the years, you're going to build up and have and amass an amazing amount of knowledge. And unless you're going to start writing papers, you really don't have to know where everything came from. You don't have to be able to notate, to give notations for everything. I have to know what I should be doing. So that's why I say, if you go through Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, you will have a foundation. I'm not going to say every time we rule. That's because we don't. We don't always rule like the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. But at least you'll know how to ask the question. You'll know the question to be asked, if nothing else. So that's why even though you think it doesn't apply to you, there may be something that ultimately, by learning that, does apply to you in an offhanded way. Like I said, you'll never have to wear tefillin, but maybe something about tefillin will be something that's important for you to know. That's why you run through it. I'm not saying to spend an amazing amount of time saying, what's going on? What's the mysteries around that? I'm not doing that. That's when you learn Zohar. Or when you learn Midrash, actually. When you learn the Midrash, you can say, what's behind the Midrash? If I'm learning the headlines of the Torah, what's behind that? But when I'm learning the halacha about something that doesn't really apply to me per se, like Nida for me, doesn't really apply that way to me. So it applies on a different level. But I still have to understand what's going on. As a man, I have to understand what's going on. And it makes me sensitive to certain things. Which again, as a woman who doesn't put tefillin on or talit or anything else, she should become sensitive to what her man has to put up with, or her children have to do. So that's why it would be important to learn, even though it doesn't apply to you specifically. Okay? Then you also have number 3, Mesiras Nefesh, in commenting on the verse in which Hashem pledges to show kindness to those who love Him. The Rambam quotes a midrash: "Those who love me" refers to Jews who dwell in Eretz Israel and sacrifice their lives for the sake of mitzvah observance. The midrash goes on to record a hypothetical conversations with Jews who sacrifice for Hashem. Why are you being executed? Because I circumcised my son. Why are you being burned at the stake? Because I studied Torah. Why are you being hanged? Because I ate matzah. Why are you being whipped? Because I shook a lulav on Sukkot. So in other words, that's why it's, mind you, they're hypothetical, but in reality, many of these things actually probably did happen, and people were killed for doing simple things which nobody should have cared about. What do you care if I circumcise my child, study Torah, eat matzah, or shake a lulav? The fact of the matter is, people do care about that. People do want us to stop, because they know that if we do stop, then we lose our petexia. And that's the easiest way to stay on the top. Because the Torah says, as long, that's the blessing of Esav. As long as you get Yaakov to abandon mitzvot, you'll be on top. So they all know that, and so let's keep them down by discouraging them. By the way, this is also today, Baruch Hashem, we're not executed for any of these things, but we are discouraged from doing it. Be normal, people will tell you. And, why do you have to do this? Okay, look, you can eat matzah, but, you should really have some bread. Matzah's not good for you. And so on and so forth. Circumcision is mean to your child. Well, let him make a decision. And so on and so forth. And why do you waste your time? By the way, you're not the only one to ask that question about learning something that's not applicable. People would argue, what am I wasting my time learning the sixth order of Mishnah, which has to do with Taharot. It doesn't apply to us anymore. There's nothing there. Mashiach comes, we'll have to deal with it. But until Mashiach comes, we have to do it. And certainly, Karbanis, nothing to do. So that's why, at least I learned this, and I'll say the name for this one. I learned this from my professor in college, Professor Judith Baskin, who was given the introductory course in Judaism, I guess that's what they called it. And Judaism 101 and that. But she said that, and she is a Reformed Jew, if I remember correctly. But she said, because of that, the conservative movement does not learn only will learn 4 of the sections of the Mishnah, skipping Taharot and skipping Karbanis, because they say it will never come back. So they basically threw one third of the oral tradition out. Now, as a person, that's what she said. So I leave that to JTS to argue with her, not with me. And all the conservatives don't argue with me. It was said by somebody else, but I'm just quoting it. But my point is, it's sad, it's crime and sad, because again, those sections have a lot. It's not anybody who learns Gemara knows that the Gemara doesn't only deal with just the subject at hand; it deals with a whole bunch of other stuff. But even that being said and done, to throw something out because I will never use it again means I shouldn't learn Latin. I shouldn't learn Greek literature for the most part, because I'm never going to use it again. Surely I'm not going to use Greek, right? I'm not going to use these languages as a spoken language. I don't think people speak Latin anymore. It's a dead language. Greek they probably do speak, but because that's still alive. But these dead languages that we have, why bother you learning that? Because there's something there. There's a whole tradition there, and you have to understand that. So yeah, we would say you should learn those things. So even though, going back to Gemaras, that we wouldn't learn necessarily, we're missing a whole section of who we were. It's like saying I don't have to learn my history because what do I need that for? It's not affecting my life. Then you're missing half the stuff. You want to say? What do you want to say? Okay. Okay. So according to the Ramban, Nachmanides, our love for Israel strengthens and increases when we suffer for him, because physical sacrifice for his sake makes us aware of a deep, burning love for him that already exists in our subconscious mind. Okay. Yogurt on your glasses. Our study of these Rishonim should lead us to conclude that every scientist must love Hashem passionately, for the more you know about nature, the more you love Hashem. And that anyone who studies Torah loves Hashem. And that the love of him should increase in proportion to the amount of Torah one studies. And finally, that anyone who suffered for Hashem must love him. In reality, however, the scientific world is staffed by thousands of declared atheists. In our time, many scientists have become so captivated with the theory of evolution, which allows people to deny the existence of a higher being, that they refuse to allow any debate on the matter. In the landmark case a Texas school board was threatened by university professors that if their students were taught to question the theory of evolution, they might not be accepted into a university. And when Dr. Francis S. Collins was nominated to head the National Institute of Health, many scientists objected to his nomination because he is a believer in God. Now you have the famous question, if I accept the theory of evolution, must I necessarily, if I accept the story of creation, must I necessarily reject the theory of evolution? The answer is no. God uses nature, if you will. He created the laws of nature, so he uses that. It's God created something from nothing, which goes against all scientific belief because they don't accept spontaneous generation. Although for this matter, they will accept spontaneous generation just in order to deny God. But in general, accepting Yesh Me'ayin is an acceptance of the theory of spontaneous generation. So they have to either reject or accept. That's up to them at that point. But if one wants to see, as we can, a growth in evolution, if really one wants to look at that, so it can certainly go by, the Torah can certainly be read through that lens.
Interspecies. We believe that within a species things can evolve, but apes don't become men.
Well, they can devolve. So the Midrash, I believe, says they devolved into apes.
Oh.
I believe it goes that way. But it's, but regardless.
Well, that explains a lot of things for some of the people I know.
Okay, regardless of that. But what I'm saying is, yeah, I'm agreeing with you. But what I'm presenting is that they can coexist. The theories can coexist. The reason they don't for most people is because once I start explaining where life comes from, I believe that I can reject a creator because I see an evolutionary process, and that's where the mistake comes. I can see an evolutionary process, no problem, but I have to understand that there is a designer there. And that's where the argument comes in. That's all. It seems that in the case of many scientists nowadays, not only does the study of nature fail to bring about a love of Hashem, on the contrary, it causes them to deny his existence. While not nearly so striking, the same issue exists in regard to Torah study. There are people who spend years of their lives in intensive Torah study and do not feel the love of Hashem filling their hearts. Why is that true, by the way?
Because it's all an intellectual exercise.
Correct. It's intellectual. For many people, it is an intellectual pursuit, and they can study it, but they will not apply it. That's why in the halacha, well, certainly Musar, it says, actually, the Ramban to his son wrote a letter. He said that every time you study something, make sure that you put it into practical use. Try to always figure out some way you can use it. That way, it becomes real to you. So if I'm learning about one ox who gores another ox, and I'm in 2016, it doesn't really mean that much to me.
One car.
Well, the problem is you can't use a car either, because the car is not a sentient being. Although these days, the cars can park themselves. So I'm not sure. One computer's talking to another. It could be an interesting situation at that point. But but that's really what it is. If I'm not applying that knowledge that I have to say, what can I learn a halacha, I learn a midrash, I learn a pasuk, whatever I'm learning. So how can I make that real to me? If I don't, I just leave it theoretical, or worse than that, I just leave it as I put it in a box. Like when you're learning a language, how do you learn a language? What's the best way to learn a language? Speaking it, immerse yourself in it. You immerse yourself in it, you get all the language, you feel like an idiot at the beginning, but as you go, that's how we learned English as we were starting out, whatever your first language is, and so on and so forth. What happens is people go through flashcards, and they'll give you all the breakdowns of conjugations. But then, And you can do it. You can spit it back to me. But now I ask you to put into a sentence, recognize the sentence, and you get all lost because you didn't go from one spot to the next. And that's partly here too. That person can study Torah all day long, spend years, but they don't feel the love of Hashem filling their hearts for one reason or another. Either they didn't apply it or it was never there. And as far as suffering is concerned, the Holocaust, among many other tragedies that struck our nation, left millions of Jews without a love of Hashem. Now, obviously, the Rishonim are not wrong. So how do we resolve the contradiction between their statements that these methods are guaranteed to cause us to love Hashem, which seems to be, and what seems to be the reality? The answer to the question can be derived from a legend made famous by the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz. A man once visited the Louvre, one of the world's premier art museums. As he walked from one painting to the next, he began to voice his disappointment in the artwork. "This is what they call beautiful?" he asked. Standing next to one painting, "It looks like yogurt." He moved on to the next masterpiece and again announced, "Yogurt!" When he criticized the third piece with the very same description, a man standing next to him asked, "Can I see your glasses?" The critic removed his glasses and handed them to the fellow, who held them up to the light. "Of course all you see is yogurt," he exclaimed. "The lenses of your glasses are covered with yogurt." The Rishonim's methods for building love for Hashem are indeed foolproof, as long as the practitioner wants to build love for Hashem. If someone studies nature, studies Torah, or sacrifices for Hashem, but he does not feel his heart overflowing with love for him, something must be wrong. His vision must be blocked by yogurt. There must be some issue that is causing him to avoid Hashem. In order to feel love, one has to want to feel it, not seek to avoid it. So that's really the secret here. If I'm going to try to develop my love for Hashem, yes, I can study nature, I can watch them put up this building, I can do a lot of things and see, wow, how all these things fit together. And if they fit together, how much it must be to fit this world together. Here they were making a trench in the backyard for the drainage, but they didn't think of that before. It was a mess up of the whole system. So they finally figured it out. Oh, we have a lot of water coming. We don't want to flood the backyard. So they figured out how to get it to the drainage pond. And as I was watching the guy do what he's doing, it was very interesting. I stayed out there a little while and studying studying what he was doing and asking questions as you go. Fine. And I was a little, wondering, well, why would you do this and that? But it was an amazing thing to watch. And then now when I came back, before the class, I walked around the building to see what happened. And I saw how he did everything. It was brilliant. Mom was brilliant. I mean, for him, he's thinking, yeah, you're a rabbi and you think that's brilliant. It's simple stuff. For me, it was brilliant how the guy went around, did everything he had to do, hooks everything up, doesn't make a total mess or anything, doesn't rip everything up, say, okay, we have to start from brand new. Just the precision cuts he has to, make it work. That's all. Hook into the system that's already there. Done. Okay, when you see that, when you see how the mind works, how everything works, you say, Rabbi Shalom, you gave us a brain, Baruch Hashem. Certain people have that skill, I have these skills. And that's how the world works together. Again, siding up all these things that for them, it's nothing. Bang, 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 bang. For me, and they have to visualize it. The biggest person? The one who had to visualize this place. And the colors that go with it. The decorators. It's amazing what they can do. I look and say, okay, it's the same thing we had before. And then no, it's not. Okay, fine. But like I said, you look at all that, it's wonderful. If I learn Torah, again, I can learn it as an intellectual pursuit, or I can learn it and say, why would Hashem want me to blah, blah, whatever the case is. We're learning this in Parshat Acharimot. It gives all the arayot, who we can't marry and so on and so forth. And you're wondering, why? Even the Ramban says, why can't we marry why can't a brother marry a sister? You can keep the money in the family. It's great. What's wrong? So he gives his reasons. But the fact, by the way, that a Rav, a Rishon, could ask that question and not be killed for it, shows that we all can ask that question. We can ask anything we want, and we can hopefully come up with some rational answers to why Hashem wants it. If we don't come up with the rational answer, again, Nasa v'nishma, don't worry about it, leave me alone. But the thing is to try to understand what Hashem wants from us. Again, that's all the Musar, get close to Hashem. So that's really, and then also when you have a cold, I can either take the cold, the cold is the easiest, or I forgot my keys, I put this in the wrong pocket, whatever, and I have to look for that trouble. Again, if I realize, that's Hashem punishing me because I did something wrong, let me figure what I did wrong, okay, maybe I used this wrong, maybe I talked to somebody wrong, whatever the case is going to be, because this would have to do with talking. So, and I use that to say thank you so much for the opportunity to do tshuva. Okay, then I'm loving Hashem. If I just say, where is that thing? I forgot it again, I lost it, and I go crazy, then I've done nothing. Okay, that's what he's talking about. All depends on how we look at this. So on April 12, 1961, the Russian cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, I hope I said his name right. Gagarin? Okay. You speak Russian? Okay, good. So he became the first person to travel in space. Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet premier, reported that Gagarin proved that there was no God because he did not see him while up in orbit. The utter foolishness of Khrushchev's statement is astounding. We know that God is not physical and cannot be seen. But even if Khrushchev was expecting Gagarin to see some sort of physical manifestation of God in space, the lack of such a vision proved nothing. The Vostok capsule that propelled him into space barely cleared the gravitational pull of Earth and orbited only several times before coming back to Earth. Even with Khrushchev's shallow understanding of what God should be, Gagarin may have missed him because he was beyond the capsule's altitude. It is obvious that this statement was made with little consideration by a person whose personal view clouded his judgment. By the way, he's also thinking of, it's only Jews who could read it that. If I was a non-Jew, I would say, of course, he should have been looking for a body, because Jesus is the embodiment. So if I'm looking at Christianity's God or something else, I am looking for a thing out there, as compared to
Christianity even teaches that there's a visible form for
good.
God the Father.
Good. Okay. I didn't know that. But I'm just saying we all have this. Many people have a mind. Again, the beard, whatever, white coat, white thing, whatever the vision is going to be. So it would make sense to me that a person who's trying to destroy religion is going to pick on that concept that we have and say he didn't see anything up in space. There's nobody pulling the strings. We didn't see him, so therefore he doesn't exist. And for him to argue, well, it was beyond the capsule's altitude. Altitude? Was I saying it right? Altitude, right? Altitude, thank you. I know I was saying it wrong. Didn't know why I was saying it wrong.
I remember the big stir that was created when they quoted that in the newspapers.
Oh, no, I was. Can't help you with that one. That wasn't. Okay. In contrast, 7 years later, American astronauts on Apollo 8 were the first to broadcast pictures of Earth taken from space on national media toward the end of their mission. The 3 crew members recited the first 10 verses of Genesis relating the story of creation.
That's back when America had a God.
I'm surprised they did that. Okay. In July it'd be interesting to see that, but they wouldn't have that on YouTube. Okay.
I'll bet they would.
Yeah, that would be so interesting. On July of 1969, U.S. astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to set foot on the moon. Set foot on the moon, right? In a broadcast shown nationwide on the night before they landed. Aldrin said, personally, in reflecting on the events of the past several days, a verse of Psalms comes to mind. When I consider the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars with which you have ordained. This is man. What is man that you are mindful of him? What's also beautiful to see, by the way, and I said this in relation to an Israeli Lapid. When Lapid was speaking to the Knesset, encouraging, that's what I'm saying, encouraging the Orthodox to be more open to others, he quoted Midrashim. And I was so impressed that a secular Israeli would quote the Midrashim. But I was curious if he was just, a speechwriter, somebody wrote thoughts for him, or if, no, really all Israelis learn that. So I asked the local shliach here, and I asked him that. Do you guys in school learn Torah and Midrash and so on and so forth? He said, absolutely. That's part of our education. Obviously, it stops after a certain time, unless we want to study it, but it's part of the secular school. And I said to him, you don't realize how much enjoyment I get knowing that. Because even, and I'm saying this here, even if it's not taught l'shem shamayim, the bottom line is that the Jews of Eretz Israel know more about their background than the Jews of America. The Jews of America have basically, except for the Orthodox, have basically thrown everything away. They threw the baby out with the bathwater. And they don't know anything. Here you have Israelis who, like Buzz Aldrin, can quote Tehillim to you, can quote Torah to you. They know, even if they don't observe, they're connected. And that is beautiful. That is fantastic. Again, why they don't observe, that's not where I'm going from. If the conservative and reform world and Reconstructionists and every other one of the denominations that they want to make up these days, if they would teach the children and themselves and the adults Torah, however they want to say Torah, Ta'ira, however they want to do it, who cares? Let the Jews know what their background is. Let them know what the Midrashim say. Let them know all this. And if they don't choose to follow, okay, I can live with that. But at least let them have the opportunity.
But they don't want them to have
Oh, so I wouldn't say that either. I'm not going to condemn them like that. But the fact of the matter is that we have more important things to do in this world, namely to play basketball and to get into the best colleges and so on and so forth. What I'm saying is that, unlike the Israelis, where it's part of their culture, here it's not. And I get such enjoyment knowing that in Eretz Israel, at least, they know somewhat of what's going on. Now, again, do they have the same background as a yeshiva guy as an Orthodox? No, because they're not learning it from that point of view. But nonetheless, to have those midrashim, to have that Gemara knowledge, to have a desire.
But isn't it almost more tragic for them because they have the intellectual knowledge, but it doesn't touch them spiritually?
No, it does. You're wrong. It does.
They would be secular.
No, that's not true either. It's not true. It does touch them, and they will still be secular because they don't want to do everything, but they still have a semblance of Shabbat. They still have a semblance of many things. They still have, they do a lot more. Again, their reform, quote unquote, their reform secular is probably going to be more religious in reality than our reform and conservative. In reality, I'm just saying straight out observance of what they do and what they're forced to do because of certain things that don't happen in the Jewish state. So it's just an amazing thing. They know Shabbat. They don't have to like Shabbat, but they know Shabbat. They know they can't get public transportation. It shuts down. That's what Yuval told me. It shuts down even in Tel Aviv. I thought Tel Aviv was so secular. But Baruch Hashem, for the secular government, the socialist secular government, there was a recognition that if we want this to be a Jewish state, there has to be something Jewish about it. And that's Torah. And I think that's fantastic. I mamish think that it's unbelievable. I'm so happy about that. I really am. And I wish we could have that in every other country. I wish, certainly in the United States, I wish that other people would care that much to give it over, to say, we have to do this. This is who we are. Again, whether or not you're going to follow it, whether you're going to have Shmora Matzah versus Goodman's or whatever else they have around there, it doesn't bother me. Have a Seder, light Shabbos candles. Shabbos candles, I don't understand why people can't light Shabbos candles. It's the easiest thing. You light it. What's the big deal? Make a kiddush. What's the big deal? I'm not saying follow Shabbos. Recognize. That's all. And people don't have the time. And I know people.
You have to live though in an area like Borough Park or Williamsburg to have the state do what.
I'm not asking America to force us to do anything. What I'm saying is, when I was growing up, I thought everybody lit Shabbos. I thought everybody lit Shabbos candles. I thought everybody turned their house over for Pesach when I was growing up. And then I was found out, growing up, from one family alone, I found out, wow, I was wrong. And it was amazing to me. I said, how can you have bread this Pesach? We don't hold by that. And I was thinking, whoa, that's unbelievable. Okay, but that family was Yotzim in a Klal. That was the exception to the rule. It wasn't the norm. The norm was that people were in those days, the conservative Jews, were lighting Shabbos candles, were doing certain things. As time went on, people, the old guard was dying out, and they died out. And so the new guard came, and they don't even know what Shabbos candles are. They don't know these things. And I'm wondering, well, how did that happen? With all the Hebrew school that they tortured us to. It was totally torture, and that's the end of it. And I refer you to my history classes for that. I said straight on, it's the worst mocker to the Jewish people ever to have a Hebrew school. But it's because they just teach you to hate Judaism. But it's I don't know why they couldn't get across. Maybe they tried to get across, but they were doing such a negative manner that people didn't do it. But lighting Shabbos candles, like I said, to make a kiddush, to wash before bread, to have a challah, to have kichol, to have whatever you're going to have, gefilte fish. I don't know what you're having. Okay, I'm not preaching for gefilte fish. I'm not preaching for gefilte fish, but I don't like it myself. But but I'm just saying, it used to be something, and now the majority. I was told, again, I'm just going by what I'm being told, that the majority of non-religious Jews, non-Orthodox Jews, I'll be very PC for that, do not light Shabbos candles. It is tragic, and again, I look to the rabbis and I beg them publicly. Tell the people, light Shabbos candles. Again, do simple things. I'm not saying don't drive on Shabbos. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to be a fanatic about it. All of why they should do that. But I'm not going to be a fanatic. But simple things. Let's teach them Midrashim again. Let's give them a spirit. Let's give them something to hold on to. That's all I'm saying. And they don't do that.
Wasn't the whole point of the reform, though, is so that they wouldn't be different? They would be just like everybody else in America.
No. Originally, Moshe Mendelssohn said, you don't have to be outwardly Jewish. You can be Jewish in your homes. He was always saying you should be Jewish. He never rejected Judaism. He rejected Torah Sinai. He didn't reject Torah. He didn't reject Judaism. He wanted people to be religious in their homes. He wanted them to light Shabbos candles. He wanted them to do things. Mordechai Kaplan wanted Jews to be Jews. He wanted them to learn Torah, Reconstructionism. He wanted them to learn Torah. He wanted them to make chabarot, groups where they come together and learn different texts. He wanted them to. He wanted to dismantle the rabbinate. He wanted everybody to be sharing in that. It's very positive. I like his concept. Where he was coming from was wrong. No problem. But that his concept was good. Let everybody start learning. Take ownership of your Judaism. And be as religious as you're going to be. But again, be involved. Conservative. We can't go as far as they did. We have to conserve our halacha. We have to have a halachic tradition. Again, if they would really follow their shita to the end, their opinion, their theology to the end, I would have no problem with it. I would love to see. Well, I don't know in reality what their poster child looks like, and I asked them. I have asked a Reform rabbi and asked a conservative rabbi, what does your poster child look like? And I got a deer and a headlight look at me. What are you talking about? What poster child? I told him what my poster child looks like. So what's yours? Okay, so we have a clear picture. What are you trying to create? But if you would just take that and say, show me what you want, and do you have that? I challenged my friend to that. I said, show me one person. And I said, even if you're the poster child, which you should be, normally the rabbi should be the poster child, so a representative of that. So even by your standards, let it be what you are. How many do you have that are like you? None. So what are we doing? Okay. Again, what are you preaching? What's the point? Give somebody a model to look at. But that's my point. That except for the Orthodox world, nobody's doing that. And as a result, Jews are left to their own design. And of course they're going to say, I'm just as Jewish as you, blah, 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 blah. Speak to the hand, leave me alone. I'm not interested in that. I want to know, don't compare yourself to me. Me, I'm a different breed. Look at your mirror and say, are you the best Jew you could be according to how you define Judaism? And what's your poster Jew look like? I wrote an article about that. If anybody reads blogs, I wrote that as a blog. What does your poster child look like? Huh? So, I mean, really, that's what has to happen. That's what he's getting into here. Okay? So, right, so he says the difference between the reactions of the Russian cosmonaut and the American astronaut begs an explanation. Does the experience of traveling in outer space or any other study of nature cause a person to become a greater believer in Hashem, or does it make one doubt? The answer is that it depends on the person's prior mindset. Someone who enters space with the intention of proving his atheistic belief is likely to emerge with the foolish observation made by Khrushchev. The key to growth through nature and all other methods mentioned by the Rishonim is open-mindedness. If we find ourselves unaffected by the study of nature or the study of Torah or by suffering, then we must have yogurt on our glasses. There must be some agenda that prevents us from viewing the evidence with an open mind. What is that agenda? Secular people may fear subconsciously that impartial examination of the evidence will result in a positive proof of the existence of a creator, which would mean that there must be a purpose to life and that the world is not a free-for-all. That's a scary situation. If I know that there's a purpose to my life, that you created me, Shalom Aleichem, so then I have a problem, even if I don't accept all of the mitzvot, by the way. I recognize there's a God. Once there's a God, there's a creator. You create something for a reason. This computer was created for a reason. This microphone was created for a reason. This book, paper, the building was created for a reason. If nothing else, shelter. There's a reason behind everything we do. So, if on the other hand I hold there's no creator, so then there's no reason. Baruch Hashem, there's no reason. I can do what I want. I have no goals in life. But once there's a creator, then there's a reason for me being here. If there's a reason for me being here, I have to figure out quickly what that is. And secular Jews, or secular people in general, Don't want to hear that. Your atheist friends on your blogs, that's the worst thing for them to hear. You have a purpose in life. I have no purpose. What's the purpose? I was born by accident, and I'll die when I die. Who cares? Life's an accident. That's the problem that he's bringing on. So since the existence of a creator will require them to change their lifestyles, their study of nature is distorted by their determination to find proof for their prior beliefs. No matter how convincing the evidence is, they will always find reason to argue or ignore it. Okay, so people can condemn ArtScroll all they want, but the writer, Rabbi Berkowitz, has it down beautifully. If there was even a suspicion that this world could be put together by a mistake, a real thing that people could say, oh, you know what, I can see that, 50-50. The odds are 50-50, no problem. But it's not. Again, everything fits together perfectly. Just like this drainage out here. I don't know if you noticed it, the beautiful drainage out here. They did a beautiful job this morning. But just as it took work to make it, they had to think how they're going to do it. They had to do it, cut the stuff, blah, 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 and make it go. So if that needed somebody to figure it out, to get the water over there, you're trying to tell me a world that doesn't need a creator? Doesn't make sense. For religious Jews too, there is much to fear. Many of us are ready to focus on God to the extent that it does not restrict us too much, but we have our limits. When we find something that seems to threaten the comfort of our existence, we make sure not to focus on it too intently. And even if we do allow ourselves to study such information on an intellectual level, sometimes it is not our eyes that are being blocked, but our heart. We can not find it within ourselves to make the emotional change that is necessary. In other words, you learn something and you say, oh wow, that would really put a crimp in my style. So rather than do that and take the effort, I'll just decide it's an interesting point. My friend in college used to say, when he wanted to say strange, he would say, oh, that's so interesting. Okay. So
have you seen, is that a phenomenon amongst Jews that are born from birth and grow up and understanding from kind of
what, to ignore certain things?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody does it. If it doesn't fit my lifestyle, then I want to find a way out.
If you're from and you believe in a system, especially, I mean, when they have to have some kind of rationalization.
No, the rationalization is, I should say yes. The rationalization is, there's a heta for everything. Ask enough rabbis, you'll find a leniency. That's really what it is. Everybody says, there used to be an expression in Yiddish, frag der Schale, es ist treif. That you ask the question, it's treif, it's no good. Because why are you coming to me with the question? You're coming to me with a question because you have a problem and you know that really is forbidden. So you come to me and you say, Rabbi, I have this thought that something happened. Okay, you know really, you're ready to throw it away. But you say, let me call the rabbi. Maybe I don't know something. So you call me up and I say, well, this, that, the other thing. And then so on and so forth. And so you have to decide if you want to do it or not. Now what some people do is call the rabbi and say, Rabbi, I have a theoretical question. To say, Baruch Hashem, a theoretical question. What's going on with your theoretical questions? So, right, they ask the question, say, theoretically, blah, blah, blah. But you could say this too. So they say, so what's the answer? I say, you said it's theoretical. I don't have to give you an answer. Leave me alone. You want to tell me it's a fact of life? That means you have to listen to me. If you listen to me, then you're stuck. So, but that's how they do it. So the frum person, from birth, went to yeshiva enough, went to a Beis Yaakov enough to know that to every single question there's a couple of answers. So they say, okay, my mother did this way, my father did this way, my rabbi did it this way, whatever. And I think it's this way. I learned and I hold it like this. Yeah. That's also something out there too. They find some shita out there, some opinion out there that happens to somewhat agree with them, and they say, good. That's how they do it, by the way. So it doesn't doesn't crimp their lifestyle.
I told you before, there was one guy I knew at the Young Israel in Sharon. I'm pretty sure it was FFB.
Right.
And he was in a discussion with somebody else. I was kind of listening because we were brand new within Orthodoxy, and I was just trying to absorb everything. And he says, if you don't know, don't ask.
Right. Huh? Right. That's right. You don't know, don't ask. If you don't know, okay. So again, but yes, from people will do that from birth. If you're a Baal Tshuva, by the way, this one Baal Tshuva is the exact opposite. They want, because they came to it on their own, they want to ask the question, they want to do what's right. What they become disillusioned as, when they get all the different answers, when they see from people that they respect doing something different, and when they ask them, they say, you hold by that? Okay, so now what happens, the Baal Tshuva says, well, I respect that guy, he must be right, or they're just totally disappointed, and now they reject it. And then my answer to them is, who made him God? Why'd you make him your model? If you're going to pick a person, pick the rabbi already. You hired the guy, let him be the rabbi, let him be your model. What are you picking on the schlepper who's doing what he's doing? No matter how big the schlepper is. Okay, what are you picking on him for? Pick on the Ravs. You hired a Rav, so look at the Rav, see what the Rav does. Model the Rav. Don't model the guy who sits in the back and wants to talk. That's not the guy you pick on, okay? So success, let's finish off. Success in Avodas and Avos Hashem, the love of Hashem, is dependent on open-mindedness. The first step to impartial investigation of nature and the Torah is to recognize that the fear that prevents us from doing so is the fear of the unknown. We don't know that a life of closeness to Hashem will be painful and make us unhappy, but we are afraid that it might. That fear brings an inability to see the beauty of life with Hashem. We get caught up in a track of circular reasoning. We are afraid that the restrictions imposed by a God-filled existence will make us unhappy. So we refrain from investigating how beautiful such a lifestyle is and how happy it will make us. The Rishonim's approach to Avos Hashem is effective, but only for those who are able to remove to remove these obstacles. We must learn to impartially examine each piece of information we learn and see where it leads us. We must not be afraid of seeing how beautiful life can be when we realize that we are not restricted. We should focus on what we realize is the true importance of life. We must be brave enough to embrace a life in which we don't feel any temptation to break the rules, because we are so clear about where we want to go and how we are going to get there. Okay, we'll stop there.